Hi, everybody. I'm John Self, and welcome to Your Career Questions. I was for 27 years, I was an executive recruiter. And so I'm happy to answer your questions as a career coach, as a former executive recruiter. I cover everything from the resume through interviewing, reference management, and onboarding. So if you have questions, let us know. You can drop your questions. We're going to be monitoring the chat here. That's always an interesting thing to do when you are, let's see, chat. There you go. Monitoring the chat. So drop it in. Peter, thank you for checking in from New Jersey. I missed the Dubai feed this morning, so I hope it was a good one. There's a great thing I want to tell you about. It's called Strategy Focus Group. It's run by our good friend Ron Thomas, who was Martha Stewart's former CHRO, and he runs a weekly CEO masterclass live from Dubai. And Peter was on that a few weeks ago and was absolutely brilliant. And he is you need to check him and start following him. He is doing one thing right now, but he's moving on to some really exciting stuff. And it just goes to show you that people, regardless of where they are in their lives, you can start over because you have a lot of experience and a lot of maturity, and you can do a lot of great things in this life. So there you go. I forgot that I have a blue background, so I'm sort of fading away into the blue here. I was on TikTok last night. We had about 450 people join us last night, so I got a lot of questions. If you have questions, drop them in the chat, and I'll try to answer them as we go along. I won't use your name, or if I do use your name, I won't use a last name, and I won't use a city because it's all confidential. So I hope you're ready to get going. And the first one that comes up today is, what's the difference between a resume and a CV? And this comes up all the time, but it's something that is one of the most misunderstood things in career management. People refer to the CV and resume interchangeably, and that's not the case. A CV is an academic record of your degrees, your articles, that sort of thing. It does list your work, but it's not necessarily easy to find. And I had doctors submitting CVs all the time for executive positions, and then they would get very upset when I'd send them a note back saying, "This looks interesting, but I need a chronological resume before you can advance." A chronological resume, that's where you list all of your jobs from the most current down. Now, if you've been around for a while, you don't have to list all your 15 or 20 jobs that you've had in maybe a 30 or 40-year career. But after about 10 to 15 years, after that, you can just say previous employment, list the name and the date, and just list it. You don't have to, you list your title, the company, place of where it is, your title, and the date of employment. That's all you have to list. And that can stay fairly static. If you are, so you want to list your most current down. And what we encourage you to do is list the company name, the location, a description of what the company does. That helps the recruiter. Then you want to list your job title, and then you want to give 2 or 3 sentences to what you do in the scope of responsibility, what your scope of responsibility is. And then below that, in order of importance, or based on the weight of importance assigned in the job summary, list your accomplishments, and you need to make them quantifiable. Supervising 1,200 people is not a quantifiable accomplishment. That's a scope of responsibility. Delivering a project on time, under budget, is an accomplishment. So you kind of get the gist there. That's what recruiters want to see. They don't want 12 bullets on one entry and then the next one only 2 or 3, because that then raises all manner of questions. So try to keep your bullets to 4 or 5, but try to be consistent. There may be some where you have 7, some where you have 3 or 4, but try not to go from 7 to 2 or 1. Okay. If it's a short tenure, you got to list it. Especially if you're at a senior level, and you had a deductions, because that can be verified, and you don't want to get caught. You don't want to get a preliminary job offer and then they find out you've not been telling the truth about one of your key elements. So that's something that I think that we would encourage you to do. And let's see, something's not working here. Okay, there you go. Well, I'm not getting the big screen to come up, and I'm not sure why. Okay, we'll just take that out. Anyway, let me do this real quick and just cancel this off. And hopefully that'll make it better. It did not. So anyway, we're just going to go back and run it the way we were doing it a few minutes ago. Sorry about this, but this is a new studio that we're learning here, and so every once in a while I push a button that doesn't work. That's life. So that covers the resume, and I apologize for the distraction there, but this is not network television. This is trying to give you information to help you. And by the way, you can learn that I'm still learning how to run one of these things. Okay, how long should my resume be? That was a comment that I got frequently when I was a lecturer for the American College of Healthcare Executives annual Congress. I did that for 10 years, taught the interview course. And what I always said is it needs to be commensurate with your number of years of experience and your work, the kind of work you were doing. Some people have had great jobs and maybe 5 or 6 jobs over 7 years, and they've had a lot of accomplishments that really sell their value. Okay, your resume may be 3 to 4 pages. That may be fine. If you're just out of college and you haven't had much work experience, 1 to 2 pages should be more than enough. But if you come out of college and you've got a lot of volunteer stuff and you submit a 3-page resume and you don't have any work experience, I guarantee you that's not going to make any recruiter really happy. So just think and just kind of keep it relative. And there are no hard and fast rules, just common sense. Although I realize that's a misnomer. It's not very common these days. How should I Okay, another common question. This one, I scribbled this in off the screen earlier. How should I dress for a job interview? How do I sort that out? A lot of people are very casual these days, and that's true. But in interviews, people tend to wear coats and ties. Now, that's kind of beginning to trend out. I was an old school guy, I must admit. So let me give you some advice here. If you're being invited on site or even a video interview, you'll probably get a phone call from the person who's coordinating everything, their assistant, and maybe just the recruiter, and just ask the recruiter, what is the dress code for your organization for interviews? That's not an embarrassing question to ask. And so if they say, well, the boss wears a coat and tie, then I think you need to wear a coat and tie. If they wear golf shirts and slacks, then I would suggest you wear golf shirt, slacks, and a sport coat. If you're a woman, sort of business mid-range, not too formal, not too casual. So just try to go 1/2 step up above where the hiring authority, what they're going to be wearing. A blue suit with a red tie and everybody else wearing golf shirts, that's not necessarily the look you want to have. So you want to sort things out from the executive assistant or the recruiter. Find out who's on the interview team, what their titles are, that sort of thing. That's very, very helpful information. And by the way, that's information you should always ask for. I'm so used to doing group coaching, so I was getting ready to advance the slide. That probably would have sent me off into the ionosphere. How do I answer the salary issue? Well, first of all, let me preface that by saying this. More and more states are requiring companies to provide a range of compensation. For years, HR people, in their infinite wisdom, didn't want anybody to know. So what happened a lot was people would get into a job, they would go through a big interview, the company would zero in on them, everybody else would be cut free, and then the offer would be substantially below what the candidate was making. And that's on the HR people. That's on the recruiter. That's just sloppy, kind of ignorant approach to doing this. If they ask you that, don't set a range for yourself. Just say, what's the compensation? What range are you guys publishing that this is? And just say, as a general rule, if it's a competitive range, I'm going to be happy in the midpoint. Okay. You don't want to go in on the low point. You don't want to ask for the max. Okay. Just don't put yourself in a box by saying, well, I currently make $250,000, because that may take you out of the range. And if you're been out of work for 8 or 9 or 10 months, that's not, you don't want to do that, because there may be an opportunity here to go in at a slightly lower range, not substantially below, but a slightly lower range, and then get promotions up if it's a good company where you want to be. But as a general rule, just ask for the range and always just say, I'm happy. If you have a competitive job range, I'm happy to go and be at the mid range of that point based on my experience and my accomplishments. Okay. Put it back on them. All right. Um, okay. This is another good question. You always talk about customizing your resume. Can I get away with just customizing it in the professional summary and then put my skills below that? No. Recruiters more and more now, that's called a keyword dump. And the scanner is going to go through your whole resume. So you need to promulgate every section of your resume with keywords and phrases that they're using. I looked at one the other day: dynamic, robust, energetic, aggressive, hardworking. I mean, all of these words were thrown in here. You should try to include all of those words in ways to describe yourself when you're customizing your resume. The ATS, also known as an applicant tossing system, is going to recognize that, and you're more inclined to be advanced in the search if all else is equal. Okay, so don't just dump it. You need to use those keywords and phrases in your job summaries, in your position description, and in your accomplishments at each level. So it could take, somebody said, but that's going to take an hour and a half to do a customization. It is. Guess what? That's why you want to build a network, so somebody can help you get through the side door to the employer, and you're not beholding to a bunch of bots that don't exist inside a computer that you don't understand. So that's the best advice I can give you. Can I use my MBA after my name if it's a requisite in the job? As a general rule, that's not a terminal degree. Now, it used to be a no-no. It's more common today. But let me use my former industry as an example. If you become a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executive, that means you're board certified to run a hospital. Then that requires that you have an MBA. So putting that after your name is probably not a good idea. Just put it fellowship, because the people who know that you have an MBA or some kind of master's degree. Then in your professional summary, if they are requiring a master's degree and 10 years of experience, you just say, I'm a master's prepared leader, not executive, not seasoned. Seasoned says I'm old. A successful leader with 10 years of experience. So master's prepared, 10 years of experience, leadership. Those are three things that you want to stress. And because leadership is very, very important, and that is an important differentiator in your brand. I talked about this in a group coaching session Wednesday at our office hours. You can go back and replay that on YouTube. But we talked about how important it is for leadership to differentiate who you are. Now, I want to be careful here, because I'm not trying to slander anybody. But let me tell you something. Big companies, small companies, CEOs, senior VPs, COOs, a lot of those guys are not leaders. They're just well-paid managers. They're command and control people. And so, if you are a true leader, that's a great differentiator for your brand. Okay. Okay. I saw this one and I debated whether I'd bring this up, but I will, because I think this happens more and more today. I met this person at work. I am divorced, but she is still married but unhappy. Okay, well, that's nice. And when I'm around her, it's hard to concentrate because I really like her. There's great chemistry between us. What should I do? Oh, oops. And she works in the division for which I am responsible. Well, first of all, hopefully you live in a big enough town so that she can find a job elsewhere, because at some point you're going to have a conflict of interest. At some point, if you're in a medium-sized, a smaller town, somebody's going to try to use that against you, because you're always going to be making decisions that somebody's not going to like. So you need to stop and kind of think this through. And she certainly needs to stop to think this through, because in a small town, that kind of stuff gets around in a hot hurry. So my advice is she needs to really think through without you being there with her how she wants to handle this. By Probably she either needs to get a transfer within the organization so that she's not directly reporting to you or indirectly reporting to you, and or she needs to find another job, or you guys need to you guys need to work this out. And before you get involved, you significantly involved, you need to be sure that she is divorced, not separated, but divorced. Okay, and it's because that will come back to beat you to the ground in a small southern town, particularly if it's a southern town with a lot of Baptist churches. So I've seen that happen a lot. So, and I've seen a lot of careers get derailed for 4 or 5 years because they let their romances and their passions get involved in their career. They should be able to function side by side, but not. You shouldn't ever have a spouse or girlfriend or fiance in your division where she reports to you. Okay. What do employers see? Let's see, one of the biggest. Okay. What do employers and recruiters see as one of the biggest problems applicants have today? That they've done several studies on that, and here it is: coming to the interview and not be prepared. Okay, so let's talk about what does not being prepared mean. Well, it means that you hadn't read the job summary, or you're not current on it. There may be some revisions, or you don't remember everything you've read. So read it over and again several times before you actually have any interviews. Secondly, not being prepared means that when they ask you an easy question like "Tell me about yourself," you go into this long, rambling, kind of diatribe of "This is my career," and you basically repeat everything that's on your resume. They've got that. Hopefully, they've read it. The only people, though, I would offer this up. Sometimes in an interview, the people who are less prepared are the people doing the interviewing. So, and if that happens, if you're really well prepared, you have a great advantage, because then that allows you to kind of guide the conversation, because they're back on their heels if they've not read your resume, if they're not prepared for this, for what their responsibility is. The next thing about being prepared: this is not an exercise where you go and answer questions. You want to break down the job into categories. And I've gone through this before, but a lot of people still haven't they don't do this, because I think I probably need to do another coaching session on it. But what you do is every job has 4 or 5 categories. Okay. You have the people part, human resources, human capital. The second thing you have is financial management. Are you, budgeting and keeping your expenses inside the budget and having a positive effect there? Operations. If you're running a department, some departments have a big operational component, some where like a PR operation, it's more of a staff function, but you still have expenses, you still have people, and you still have projects that you have to deliver on. So that's the operations piece. If you're a service department within the hospital, you have a marketing piece. If you are if you're a part of the company that sells outside services or products, that's a marketing piece. So you can break these things down. Now, after you break out the categories, and if you're a senior executive, there may be more. But after you break these categories out, then you start saying, okay, in marketing, what are my strengths? Okay. What are my weaknesses? And everybody says, I don't like to talk about weaknesses. Oh, get a grip. Come on. Everybody has them. And a lot of people ask about them because they're poking you to test your emotional intelligence. Okay. And you want to be sure that you're comfortable talking about your weaknesses. Okay. The next thing that you need to do is think about some significant accomplishments that you've made in that category. And if you have some stories, think about a story that you could use to wrap around all your accomplishments. Say you have a before and after. I reduced turnover, and you talk about how you did it. Tell a story. Tell it in a story. People will remember that. And that also builds confidence, trust, and likability with the interviewer. So that's an important strategy to follow. So you want to be able to have your accomplishments. You want to put them in a story format. Now, if you had any, oh my God, damn, I made a big mess of that. Think about it, then write an answer, okay, in case you get asked about it. I mean, sometimes people make mistakes and it gets in the newspaper, okay? I mean, things happen. And so when that does, if you have an explanation, be honest with it, but don't dwell on the negative. Don't dwell on the negative. Say, boy, I tell you, that was one awful day. I made this decision. I had been thinking about it. I thought it was the right one. And as soon as I made that decision, and it was earlier in my career, I realized that I'd made a mistake. And I tried to repair that as quickly as possible. Let me tell you what I've learned from that. Okay. That's the magic phrase. Let me tell you what I've learned from that. And smile and just say, I can assure you, that's one mistake I'll never make again. Now, people say, gosh, you don't want to admit your weaknesses. You don't want to admit your mistakes. If you're a leader and you're confident and you have good emotional intelligence, what's the problem? Just smile, be confident, and admit I've made that mistake. I was early in my career, or I misread the situation. But let me tell you something. I really spent a lot of time diagnosing this, diagramming it out to try to figure out what I do. I journal. And when I journal, I talk about the decisions I make and think about, did I have the right people there? And did we cover the appropriate points? Those are all tools and techniques you can talk about to say, I have learned my lesson. When you're invited for an interview, they're not inviting you to embarrass you and kick you out in the street. They're inviting you for you to give them an opportunity to hire you. You want to convince them that you should be hired. And somebody who can talk about their mistakes and be confident with it and smile about it and say, it's not funny, but boy, I tell you, at the time, it didn't feel funny. Retrospectively, it's funny in the sense I can't believe I made that kind of mistake, but I'm not going to make that one again. Okay. You can really polish this up. Know it in your heart. Know it in your heart. And if you got 2 or 3 of those, that's more to know. But anyway, because let me tell you why. They may not ask you, probably won't ask you. But guess what? When you go into that interview, you know that little problem is covered. You don't have to think about it. Pay attention to what they're asking and try to be ahead of the ball. Okay. Now, again, I want to talk about something. When you go in to interview, it's not about answering questions. It's about giving them information to help them make a decision. Okay. Give them a reason to hire you. So if they ask about a marketing campaign, or they ask about a situation where you were asked to take on a project and never had anything like this before, and what did you do and how did you do it? Don't just answer the question. Sell them. Don't just tell them. Sell them on how you went about it and how you just learned so much, and you built a good team, and you ask a lot of questions, and you sought out advice from people who've done this before. Those are all things that will basically tell the employer, hey, this person has their head screwed on straight. Okay. What are some tips for the telephone screening interview? This is also a frequent question. Let me tell you this. A telephone screening interview is just the pits. I have bungled several in my life as a salesman. Yes, as a recruiter, I bungled a few of those. And when I bungled it, it's because I was really harried. I had a lot of things going on, and I didn't prepare in advance sufficiently. Okay, so I was insufficiently prepared. And when I usually bungle something like that, that's why. And when you bungle it, that's why. Let me tell you what you should do. First of all, it's hard to make connections with a voice. So you know their name. Go to LinkedIn. If they're a recruiter, chances are they've got a profile photo. Print the profile photo. And when you're on the phone with that person, talk to the photo. Okay? Talk to the photo. You'd be surprised how that will make a connection. It's very subtle. But they just in your mind, and they'll feel it if you really do a good job. They say radio disc jockeys that were so popular back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and the mid 90s, these guys had a talent for talking on the microphone, but you felt at home like they were talking to you. And that's a real key thing. I wish that was something I could master. I'm working on it, but I've got a lot to learn. But anyway, that's something that you really want to do. Also, read his or her background. You may both been in the same fraternity. You both may have gone to the same school. I mean, crazier things have happened. So you want to do this. A lot of people couldn't tell you anything about the person interviewing them. And you know why I know that? Because I did that when I first got started. And I just cringe at the number of opportunities I fouled up. Once somebody said, John, you're a great coach because you've made so many mistakes. And the truth is I have. And so I'm happy to share those mistakes with you. But that's a good tip for a telephone interview. Now, the next thing is, read that job description, think about what they're really stressing, and be ready to give quick, succinct answers. They got 20 to 30 minutes. And, I've had people call and tell me that, gosh, man, the interview went on an hour and a half. It was only scheduled for 30 minutes. And then I knew the recruiter once, and I called them and they said, yeah, the reason it went on for an hour and a half because the person wouldn't shut up. Okay. So be mindful, be self-aware, be prepared. That will allow you to be confident. And when you're confident, you will be more self-aware. What is a secondary reference? Okay. That's another good question. That's from Bob in Idaho. Bob, a secondary reference is if you're in an interview and you say, well, I used to work for John Deere. Oh, really? I did some business with John Deere. Who did you know there? And, that makes you feel good. You now have a connection. And as soon as you give them a name, that becomes a secondary reference. So, word of advice, if you're asked for, who did you work with or who else did you know there? As soon as you give up a name, they can call them. Now, if you still are employed there, they probably won't be that idiotic and violate your confidence. But they may, before they confirm the offer with you, you'll get a tentative offer and then a confirming offer. Before they do that, they may call that person and say, they said this and this. Were they really that kind of good person? So if you're going to give a name up and if they stoke your ego and punch your button, be sure the name you give up is somebody who's going to say nice things about you. Okay. And some people plant secondary references, people who are really pretty smart, they plant secondary references because they've already talked to that person and they know what they're going to say. The old rule in courtroom trial law, if you're a prosecutor or a defense attorney, you never ask a question you don't know the answer to. So that's kind of a similar situation. How important are cover letters? Well, if you look at some of these guys on YouTube and giving out advice, they say it's really important. I have a slightly different perspective because I've talked to a lot of people about this. And so let me first make an important differentiation. When you're listening to me answer questions, my context is that I deal with senior executives, CEOs, CFOs, that sort of thing, and managers. I, as a general rule, don't deal with just staff level people because it's a totally different ballgame. And most of my career has been at that level. Most all of it has been at that level. I've interviewed more than 9,000 executives. So I'm not the best person in the world to talk to you about how to get an hourly job. I mean, I certainly can talk about the interview and I can talk about your resume, but it's just a different approach. So that's the orientation piece. Some organizations will ask for a cover letter. Okay. And you submit it online. And if they ask for it, then the system is programmed to receive it. If they don't ask for it, don't submit it. Here's why. Because when the resume goes in, the scanner is going to start scanning it and it thinks the letter is a resume. And so if you don't have all those keywords and all the key information in that letter, you may get kicked out before it ever finishes the scan. So don't do that. Just follow the instructions. Don't do more than you're asked for because you could, it's called my wife calls it being too cute by half. Okay. Now, some people have really done some smart things with their resume. The safest format for your resume, because typeface that you use, how much boldface you use, boxes with color, all that nonsense can get you eliminated. So a lot of people will submit a plain text document because that's the safest way to get through. There's so many of these scanner programs out there. You don't know who's using what. You don't know how old it is. So if you're just trying to be really safe, use a plain text document. If it comes out, you get a really high scan score. The recruiter will call you and say, you've been identified as someone we need to talk to. I'd like to set up a screening call. Oh, great. Thank you. I'm excited because this is a company I really have a big interest in. And this is a position that really interests me a great deal. By the way, I updated my resume in a format that's probably a little bit easier for you and subsequently the interview team to look at. May I send it to you? And of course, they're going to say yes. I've only had one person that says, just resubmit it on the computer. Now, that can be problematic, but generally, they'll ask you to send it directly to their email. So now you got their email. Secondly, you can send a cover letter with that because it's not going through the scanner. So that's my two bits on 2 cents on cover letters. It's like a lot of other things with all the new automation. It's not the same recruiting game that it used to be. Um, let's see. You have made several references on your YouTube group coaching sessions to being job search ready. Let's check on time. We're at the bottom of the hour, so I've got a couple more. We'll wrap it up so that you can get in the front end of the line on the lunch call. Let's see. What does job search ready mean? Well, the job market has really changed. And, I've spent the last 25, 30 years focusing on the job market and focusing on those things that will help you accelerate your job search, will help you be attractive to the employers. So I really pay a lot of attention to this stuff. And I would tell you right now that if you haven't been in the job market in 3 to 5 years, even in the last 3 to 5 years, it has changed a boatload. So what you want to do is get up to date with what's happened and what is going to be expected of you if you have to suddenly start looking for a job. So you want to find out how the resumes work. You can go to our website at johngself.com and download a resume workbook, and it'll give you some formats and give you some design ideas and show you what I'm talking about in terms of how you display the information. So that's free too. You can go do that. I think there's also a worksheet for the categorization of the job. You can download that for free. But what you want to do is understand how to break down the job. You want to understand how to sort the keywords from the job summary. Okay. And we have a worksheet for that, but because they're looking for certain words and the repetitive nature, how many times did they use that word? Because if you used it 3 or 4 times, it's important that you use that word because that's going to get picked up by the ATS scanner. Okay. So the being job search ready. Also know that LinkedIn, you need to do more with your profile. You need to have a really stylized banner at the top. You can do that now using canva.com. It's an Australian company, online design format, and for dummies like me. Okay. So you can do that. I can teach you how to do that. It's really easy. Okay. You have to kind of fiddle around with it because some of their formats and don't, the picture may block part of your design. As a general rule on LinkedIn, you want to try to keep most of your important information to the right. The most important thing on LinkedIn is you want to be sure that headline tells people what you do. Okay. There are still people that are manually looking at LinkedIn profiles. So that's something you need to do. The other thing is you need to have a great picture and have a good headlines and good hashtags and all those things. Now, LinkedIn's changing. They're changing their algorithm routine, and it's a constant evolution. So LinkedIn is going to end up being more important than your resume eventually, and I'll talk to you about that in a group coaching session later. But LinkedIn, with all the high-speed scanners now, that's going to be how candidates are identified on LinkedIn. So that's a key thing. You need to understand that. So there are all these moving parts in a job search that you really have to understand, and you don't want to wait until HR taps you on the shoulder and says, "Would you come with us, please?" Because at that point, while you're in HR, more than likely your computer's going to be locked out. You're going to have to clean out your office. There'll be somebody maybe with you to watch what you're taking. And you may, if you've had a conflict with your boss, they may want to have a little revenge. I know that's kind of tacky, but they may even escort you from the office. I know people who haven't done anything wrong, and the boss just didn't like them and wanted to make them feel bad. And so they had security walk them to their car. That when you're walking through a lobby and everybody's staring at you, that's just a half slide step away from the police taking you to jail, if you want to know the truth. That's a humiliating thing. It's a lack of empathy. It's a lack of respect. And it's an indication that that's a crap show company and you don't want to work for people if you've heard that before. Now, there are times when people do bad things and they got caught stealing or they've done things improperly with employees. Those are situations that are entirely different. But if you're just being fired because there's a layoff or you're being fired because the boss got mad at you for something, you don't deserve to be treated the way some companies treat their employees. And I tell you, those are not people you want to work for. So if you hear a company has done that and they don't treat their employees with respect and empathy, those are not people you want to work for. I think we probably need to wrap this up now. So I think you know what job search ready means. We talk about that all the time. Get your resume ready. Start learning how to interview today. Start practicing interview techniques. You can get all of that information as a subscription on our website. The new programs are being rolled out now. That's where I'm going to spend my weekend. I'm not a web designer, so it takes me longer to do it. But it's a lot of fun for me to do. It's a lot of fun for me to try to create content and price it so that people can afford it. Just because it's a lower price point, you may not get the full service. You may not get calls to me all the time. You won't get personal one-on-one coaching, but you will get the group coaching and you will get access to these kinds of programs. So it's not a real expensive program. There are some month fees if you buy certain other programs, you buy up on that. But the monthly subscription gets you access to all online training. But then if you say, gee, I need a custom coach or I need a mock interview, you can buy that in a bundle. So that's one way to do it. We also have really high ticket offers. If you want weekly or twice weekly coaching, if you want us to help you rewrite your resume, those types of things. So we try to provide services across the spectrum to help people advance their career. So I hope that helps you a lot. I'm gonna take this one last question, just popped up. I'm a senior director over an administrative section of our finance division. I oversee AP and AR. How exposed am I to AI automation? Well, uh, I think you need to call in the dogs because the hunt's probably over. You will probably be one of the first people impacted. Now, there's a lot being written right now. There's a very famous guy who did a lot of initial work on AI who says that a lot of it's being overrated, it's overhyped, that the AI today is not that much smarter than an average house cat. Well, that showed up a couple of weeks or last week in the Wall Street Journal. I will tell you there's a big debate. There are some people that have said, I've seen it. It actually can do a lot. And but that's the kind of function that you can be replaced. So you want to be in a situation where you are in control. You're not feeding the computer. There will be a lot of jobs lost. I don't think that should be a subject for debate. Some people want to do that. That's okay. You can be in denial. A couple of people, I'm getting some interesting questions now. People say, look, the last time I looked for a job in this industry, it took me 14 months. I just don't know if I want to do that again. What are my other options? Well, there's an interesting thing going on. There are billions of dollars in business assets that are being sold. A lot of these business assets are being sold by baby boomers, people like me, who have built up really good businesses, but now most of their retirement, what they wanted to fund their retirement with is tied up in their business. So there's a whole new thing where you can work with the owners and do owner financing and give them a higher price with a lower interest rate that has some great tax advantages for them. Now, that's not the kind of advice I can give you, but I want to refer you to a site who's a terrific person. She was told she couldn't do business a certain way, and so she walked away from a lot of money and built her own company. So I think she owns like 50 companies now. Her first business was she bought a laundromat, and somebody says that's not very interesting. God, that sounds kind of embarrassing and low ride. Well, if you know anything about laundromats, and if you know that you get a good one, it's clean with good equipment in the right location, it prints money. So there are a lot of things out there. And, some people don't really know how they feel about doing that. They want to own something sexy, whatever. You can make a lot of money. There's a couple of guys in Austin that got laid off during the pandemic, and they started a window washing company because they realized there were all these home service people in the neighborhoods that weren't laid off. They're going to probably top $1 million this next year. So there's a lot to be done. Her name is Cody Sanchez. Cody Sanchez, Sanchez. She's in Austin. She has a website. She does a lot of training. She's selling training, yes, like we all do. But it's an interesting person. She has a newsletter called The Contrarian View. Sign up for that. But it can kind of give you some additional options because the executive ranks have reduced. There are more people now, a lot more, looking for jobs than there are actual positions. So don't allow yourself to get caught up. And if you're in an industry and where your skill sets are in, basic operations and finance, and it can be easily replaced, then you might, if you think you might want to own a business, at least explore that opportunity. Because I think everybody says, well, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Just learn, explore. You may be really surprised what you work out. I hope this has been helpful for you today. I want you to know how much I appreciate you being here with us. And gosh, something, there we go. Everything's working in. I want you to know how much I appreciate you being here. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday at 11 a.m. at noon, 11 a.m. Central Time here for Career Live. Thursday night, we're on TikTok. It's called Your Career Questions, and it's TikTok Live. It's 7 p.m. Central Time. We had about 400 and some people last night with us. So I've been doing this and then stopped for a period of time. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.